Welcome back, and please join our conversation as we talk about President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address with Professor Seepe and Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. And that is a speech that was mocked by the opposition parties as a daydream speech when President Cyril Ramaphosa exhorted the nation to start dreaming. And of course, analysts will ask, was it a dream or a nightmare for President Cyril Ramaphosa? And professors, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
On the show, I appreciate. Tell me, was it a dream or a nightmare for you?
Well, I think the president had difficulty in a number of ways. First, the State of the Nation address, especially after elections, must actually reflect the sentiments that were expressed on the ground. So the president wanted to capture that first. And within that, there are also aspirations. So the speech would have to capture the aspirations of the people on the ground in terms of the challenges. Then the second one was to also come up with what he calls a program of government. And the third one was to look beyond the now. And I think it was more towards the end that he came up with the issue of the dream. But people tend to remember the last part of what you have actually said. And all of them started concentrating on that. Not that there were no weaknesses in the speech. People felt that we are in a serious economic crisis. We are in a serious social crisis. We are also faced with a serious crisis in terms of the capacity of the state to deliver, and that is exemplified by the likes of ESCOM. So they had felt, because people go and listen to what they want to hear, and that is where the challenge is, and he was roundly condemned for not dealing with that. But I thought somebody who was a bit fairer in his criticism was Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who says, I have no problem with the notion of a dream, but all I wanted to hear the president talk about is the now and how.
Well, Professor Maluleke, from your point of view, you think the opposition parties were reasonable, fair to suggest that the president is daydreaming, that we are on a burning platform? And I suppose, you know, everybody would expect, including the opposition parties, to regard what is going on in the country at the moment with all the seriousness.
Yeah, no, certainly.
That we have to, yeah.
My own view is that the president could have just stopped his speech at this point after he spoke about the 7 focus areas, or priority areas rather, and then he spoke about the 5 focus areas. That for me was the heart of the speech. And if he had embellished that, going further, but not going too far from those 2 pivotal aspects of the speech, I would have been satisfied. So for me, it was more a speech that started well, but then continued on, and I thought, what now is it about? So, and the dreams come in that section of the speech, after he had done what I thought was a very important anchoring, or if you like, of the speech in the priority areas and the focus areas. Dreaming is not a bad thing. I have a sense that he was probably thinking of Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous speech, I Have a Dream. But here is the difference between his type of dreaming and that of Martin Luther King Jr. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s dreams, you will find that there is cross-referencing between the dream and something on the ground. So I have a dream that up in Alabama, where there is a lot of racism, I have a dream that up in California, where there is this and this, we are going to have this and that.
This will change, will
so
transform.
So in other words, the dream is constantly, in that speech, if you remember, the dreaming is constantly referenced to something on the ground. It is not a dream that is removed, if you like. That's the one difference. But the other difference is that, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. was powerless.
Yeah, so he
could only dream.
He could indulge, if you will,
yes,
and in that dream, but obviously mobilize, exhort people, and help them visualize what is possible. in the reality that they live
I think
in.
it's important, but help people in Ivory Park visualize what is possible.
Okay,
by acknowledging what is happening in Ivory Park.
But Professor Seepe, is it an exaggeration to say that South Africa now, is like on a burning platform of sorts, and given the economic situation and the law and order situation, any number of indicators that you look at do not make for good reading?
Yeah, I think that is why the likes of Malema were quite correct. And actually, Malema somehow was restating what Professor Maluleke was saying. Here's a president who has been on a train, and the train did not work, and it should have been a 40-minute ride, and it was 4 hours. He could have used that, even when he wanted to talk about the bullet train, to cross-reference the reality now. Then you are not seen to be dreaming out of the context. So the issues like you raised about the challenge that we face, they are actually real. And the president did acknowledge, and as the Prof says, that if you went back to the 7 priority areas and the 5 case areas where they're going to concentrate in the next coming, if it left it there would not have been so much criticism around the dreams. But what is important for me was that we saw an energized debate, of course triggered by the responses by the opposition parties, and some of them were very brutal. I mean, Malema, for instance, dealt with the issue of land. That here you are, Mr. President, that we have spent time as a nation crisscrossing the country around the land, and even Parliament is going to look at this. And yet, you start your speech by going back to 1913. And you leave it hanging there, and you just leave it to a task team that you had put together.
But sorry for that interruption, and I'll go again to the point of the 2 main aspects of the president's speech, right? That the 7 focus areas and the 5 goals or objectives that he has defined for the country. That sometimes, as sympathetic as one may want to be, people wonder, okay, you may have 7, you may have 5. There used to be 12. There used to be this. And he was part of the previous administration. This is the 6th administration where he received the mandate from the public, and he received the mandate having been in the office anyway as president for the past 12 months. He's now, 18 months into the job. That actually, I suspect people are looking for, let's call it, what is the Ramaphosa plan? What is the Ramaphosa thing that is coming to the party here that South Africa should expect over the next few years?
Yeah, I think we got a little bit of that in his Sona response. I think the Sona response was fair. It was good. It was cross-cutting and did not dwell on some of the more provocative aspects of the responses that he received. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having 7 focus areas. We could quibble about whether there should be 7 or 4 or 3, or whether there's something missing. But is a man with a plan of sorts that he's going to focus here. And he has clearly identified the fixing of Eskom as pivotal for any of the things that he wants to happen in terms of the economy. And I think we have to give him that as far as I'm concerned. The problem was simply that he waffled on other things that were not. But
I think what seems to be working against the president, even with the good intentions, a couple of things, and he's done the specific parts which you will talk to, you're more familiar with. The one part is he said last year that he was going to reduce the size of government, right? But from the public's point of view, he has not, because of the size of or the number of deputy ministers that we have, that it's not really as substantial as one thought it would be. Then we have the commissions of inquiry that have provided so much information that is now in the public domain that many people were not aware of. Maybe in the media people knew about, and they wonder, okay, now that we know that this and this and this has happened, why are there no arrests? And of course, the blame is put squarely at his door, and people wonder, we can talk all we like, but the action is very minimal.
Yeah, I think in all fairness to the president, I think South African society has with this notion that here you have a Messiah who's going to fix everything. But the president does not exist in a vacuum. He exists within both the constitutional precinct in terms of what needs, what is possible. So he can't dictate who goes into parliament. So some people have said, but you have these people as chairs. But the constitution is very clear about who can go there. It says as long as people have not been convicted of a crime, and even then they should not have been sentenced to more than 12 months without imprisonment. So he is limited, but he's also a political animal. Yes, he had made those, but those were aspirations and expressions of a wish. But the wishes are not horses. So the president finds himself in that. And also the notion of fixing the economy, it's beginning to dawn on him gradually that you can't make claims that when I take over, the economy will go to 3% as opposed to now. Because we now know that most of our challenges are largely structural. And of course, he did identify areas where the government should have control, which that came much more as a result of the criticism. So that's why I agree that his response was good in moving towards the specifics. But what I want to state more clearly, which is actually positive, is his response to the criticism. Instead of wanting to defend himself, he embraced them. And he made a statement that is very important, that we have common challenges and we have a common future.
Now,
and we need to find a common framework. So for me, it's a way of embracing, at least in a public way, perspectives that are different.
And Professor Maluleke, because sometimes we can just isolate an individual, whether it be a president or anybody else in a leadership position, and ignore the context within which they have to provide leadership, right? Now, he's moving into a different South Africa altogether to what we got used to over the past 10, 15 years or so. Just define the challenges that Cyril Ramaphosa has to deal with and has to navigate in order to take the country to the dreamland.
Well, I mean, I think he moves into a South Africa that whose economy is dead, comatose. Let me not say dead, because if it was dead, we wouldn't have arrived here.
Yeah.
And has not been growing. The numbers are pointing in the wrong direction for 3 years now, at least, if not more. So he comes in at a time like that. This is a challenge which could also be an opportunity. I mean, we must remember Obama, when he got into the presidency, the situation was worse. He had to think of stimulus packages and things like that. So that, I think, is one of the contexts. But the other is the same as all other presidents who come from the ANC. The ANC president has got to do the dance between Luthuli House and the union buildings. And that dance is a delicate one. It must be done without fault. And he must keep his eyes both on Luthuli House and on the nation that is having expectations on him, and make sure that the union buildings also function. And so there are constraints to what he can do, purely because of the nature of being both the president of the ANC and the president of the country. The ANC has now, in my view, I mean, ANC has had factions for a long, long time. People think that factions in the ANC started in 1994. But actually, even before, there were factions. But it seems to me that those factions of December 2017 refused to go away. And he has to manage that. We will
go into those in detail in a short while. I'm joined by, or I'm with, rather, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke and Professor Seepe as we look at how President Cyril Ramaphosa gets to dance, to use Professor Maluleke's words, between Luthuli House and Matlamba Ndlovu in Pretoria, whilst the nation waits for him to come up with a plan that will take us to the dreamland. And we would like to hear your views. Use the hashtag #TheModise Network on social media. Don't go away, we'll be back.